You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Hi, I'm Maria Varmazes, and I'm the host of T-, the only daily podcast for the space industry. Every weekday, I'll be covering the latest news in space technology, business, and governance by talking with the people who are forging the path in this new space era. If you're a space professional looking to separate the signal from the noise and stay current on what's happening, this show is for you. Join me every day for T-, the daily space industry podcast. Listen on all major podcast platforms or visit space.n2k.com. That's space.n2k.com.
And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. The Daggerfly APT targets an African telecommunications provider. EvilExtractor is an alleged teaching tool gone bad. A Chinese-speaking threat group is active against Taiwan and South Korea. Europe's air traffic control is under attack. A look at the RSA Innovation Sandbox. Awais Rashid from University of Bristol on the cybersecurity of smart farming. And forget about those evil maids. What about those evil sysadmins? From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Friday, April 21st, 2023. Symantec yesterday published a report on a campaign by the Daggerfly Advanced Persistent Threat against an unnamed African telecommunications company. Also known as Evasive Panda or Bronze Highland, Daggerfly is in all likelihood associated with China. The ongoing campaign abuses the legitimate AnyDesk remote desktop software to deploy previously unseen plugins from the MGBot malware framework. Those plugins' capabilities suggest that Daggerfly's goal is information collection. Symantec's post includes a set of indicators of compromise. Fortinet today blogged about the aptly named EvilExtractor, an info stealer targeting Windows operating systems. Fortinet says it was developed by a company named Codex, which claims, that is, the software product is an educational tool. However, research conducted by FortiGuard Labs shows cybercriminals are actively using it as an info stealer. Fortinet reports that based on their traffic analysis, March saw a significant increase in malicious activity with the tool. Hosted by the website EvilExtractor.com, it's usually introduced by a phishing email. It usually pretends to be a legitimate file, such as an Adobe PDF or Dropbox file, but once loaded, it begins to leverage PowerShell malicious activities. It also contains environmental checking and anti-VM functions. Its primary purpose seems to be to steal browser data and information from compromised endpoints and then uploaded to the attacker's FTP server. The malware includes many features and can be used in ransomware campaigns as well. Victims seem to be mostly located in the US and Europe, and EvilExtractor's developer, Codex, has continued to update the info stealer. Chinese-speaking threat group Genesis Day has been targeting research and academic organizations in South Korea, the Record reported yesterday. The attacks, which seem to be intended for data exfiltration, occurred in January of this year, and it appears that a new round of attacks has been launched against Japanese and Taiwanese organizations. An analysis by Recorded Futures Insect Group says that 12 South Korean research and academic websites were attacked, suffering website defacements in which the adversaries replaced each hosted website with their own in a compromised server. Genesis Day shared on its public Telegram channel that the Korea Internet and Security Agency was intended to be the first governmental target of the group. The group also made unverified claims of cyber attacks against the U.S., Ukraine, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea's Ministry of Health and Defense Ministry. Genesis Day seems to be that rare bird, a disinterested, patriotic hacktivist crew. The Record reports that there were no ties discovered between the Chinese government and the threat actor, but that the hackers also sought neither fame nor profit from the attacks. Dee Wu, senior threat intelligence analyst at Insect Group, said, "Based on the analysis of the group's Telegram channels, postings on special access forums, and its presence on a ClearNet website, we conclude that this is a hacktivist group primarily motivated by patriotism toward China, and it will likely conduct similar cyber attacks against Western and NATO targets, as well as any country or region deemed hostile to China." The European Air Traffic Control Agency Eurocontrol reports that it's under cyber attack by Russian actors. Eurocontrol's website has a terse account of the attack, which appears to be of the familiar DDoS variety. Eurocontrol says the attack is causing interruptions to the website and web availability, and that there's been no impact on European aviation. The Wall Street Journal reports that Killnet has claimed responsibility. The claim is entirely consistent with Killnet's record. Nuisance-level DDoS has been their specialty. Support personnel can represent as much of an insider risk to security as can line personnel, sometimes more because of the way they can be overlooked or disregarded. This can be seen, for example, in the so-called evil maid attacks that might be carried out by an actual member of a cleaning crew. The Wall Street Journal offers reflections on the ongoing investigation of the Discord Papers leaks, especially for what they reveal about the access that IT personnel acquire to sensitive information in the course of their daily work. The Journal writes, Airman Teixeira, the alleged leaker of the Discord Papers, worked on cyber transport systems, a role that involved work to keep communication systems up and running, according to an Air Force job description. The story goes on to point out that another notorious leaker, Edward Snowden, was also in tech support. Mr. Snowden, who lives in Russia, was described by officials at the time of his leak in 2013 as a systems administrator. Their motives, alleged in Airman Teixeira's case, were quite different, but the access their positions gave them had much in common. The European Cyber Conflict Research Initiative has issued a report on a conference that studied Russian methods of cyber warfare. The ECCRI writes, in line with its doctrine of information confrontation, Russia employed a variety of cyber operations during the war at an unprecedented scale. The primary goals of wartime operations, sabotage, influence, and espionage, have remained constant. Cyber operations provide new opportunities to achieve age-old objectives. The study focuses on what Russia achieved, most prominently a high cyber operational tempo, as opposed to the many and obvious ways Russian cyber operations fell far short of pre-war expectations. The takeaways may be this: cyber attack tools, tactics, techniques, and procedures tend to have a short life. Once used, they're blown, at least if they're used against an opponent who pays attention, and above all, an opponent who learns. Coming up after the break, a look at the RSA Innovation Sandbox. Awais Rashid from University of Bristol on the cybersecurity of smart farming. Stay with us. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. Where would InfoSec professionals be without users making security mistakes? Working less than 60 hours per week, maybe. Actually having a weekend every so often. While user behavior can be a challenge, they can also be an InfoSec professional's greatest asset once properly equipped. Users want to do the right thing, but often lack the knowledge to do so. That's one of the reasons KnowBe4 developed Security Coach, a real-time security coaching tool that takes alerts from your existing security stack and sends immediate coaching to users who've taken risky actions. Existing security tools will likely block a user from visiting a high-risk website, for example, but the user might not understand why. Security Coach analyzes these alerts and provides users with relevant security tips via email or Slack, coaching them on why the action they just took was risky. Help users learn from their mistakes and strengthen your organization's security culture with Security Coach. Learn more at knowbe4.com/securitycoach. That's knowbe4.com/securitycoach. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. Never refactor your apps again. Never get locked into an IDP. Say goodbye to your old on-prem systems and identity-managed complexity. Now you can solve your biggest IAM problems with identity orchestration, even the messy ones you thought were unsolvable. Bring Strata any IAM use case, like modernizing legacy apps to use passwordless authentication, migrating from one IDP to another, or enabling identity operation resiliency. Strata's identity orchestration platform is designed to extend the value of your identity infrastructure, no matter the complexity or scale. What's more, Strata's software is lightweight and flexible, developer-friendly, and vendor-agnostic. Want to see it in action? Share your identity challenge with Strata on a discovery call, and they'll hook you up with a complimentary pair of AirPods Pro. Don't miss out. Visit strata.io/cyberwire. That's strata.io/cyberwire. RSA Conference is right around the corner, and one of the highlights of the show is the annual Innovation Sandbox, a friendly competition providing hopeful startups with the chance to pitch their wares to a group of distinguished judges and perhaps catch the eye of investors and partners. My guests today are Cecilia Marinier, Senior Director at RSA Conference for Innovation and Scholars, and one of the Innovation Sandbox judges, Barmak Meftah, co-founder and general partner at Ballistic Ventures. Barmak Meftah starts us off.
I'm actually really excited to be part of that incredible group of folks that are going to judge some of the best entrepreneurs that we see out there. And, what we do as venture capitalists is, we look at a lot of ideas every year and, patterns start to emerge, and sort of applying the same pattern matching towards some of the most innovative companies, especially in the early stages of entrepreneurship, is really an incredible thing to do. So for me, it's a natural extension of what I do every day. And this fell on my lap, and I couldn't be happier to be part of it.
What are some of the things in your mind that set apart the competitors that can really launch someone to the top?
Yeah, I think, as I look at the submissions and sort of look at the trends in the industry in general, I put them into two distinct categories. There's what I would call evolutionary ideas, which only occur in cybersecurity, probably more than any other area in technology. And those fall into the category of old security controls that have to be reinvented because of compute architecture changes and what we call adversarial obsolescence, which is the adversary forces the obsolescence of old security controls. And so you have to think about new ways of doing what probably has become obsolete. So in that category, think of, application security is making a huge comeback. So the idea of, giving the appropriate tools in the hands of the developers so security can be built into the fabric of the software. That's an evolutionary idea, but the move to the cloud has sort of forced the reinvention of that. I would say data security falls into that category. Cryptography falls into that category. And then the second distinct themes that we look at are revolutionary ideas, which are trends that haven't necessarily happened yet, but we see the emergence of those happening. A couple of examples I can point out to, giving developers the appropriate APIs or SDKs so they can build cyber features into the fabric of the software has never been done before. This is something revolutionary and brand new. There's a emergence of Web3 technology that really, from a market timing perspective, we might be 2 to 3 years out still, but I think it's a trend that's going to emerge. And so we look at both, and I wouldn't necessarily say one is more important than the other, but they kind of fall in different themes, and we love innovative companies that play in either group.
Cecilia, you all recently announced the finalists for this year's Innovation Sandbox. What strikes you as you look at that list? Or are there any trends here or anything that they have in common, or is it a wide spectrum of possibilities here?
I'll see that, Dave, is why I brought Barmak on. But I'll just say one piece about it myself, and then I do want to actually let Barmak kind of speak to the trends. One of the things that was really amazing this year was just the amount of companies, the number of companies that actually applied to RSA Conference Innovation Sandbox. We had a 150% increase, and it just demonstrates just how much this industry, how quickly it's moving and how important this is. And so overall, I want to tell all of the people that submitted, congratulations, because gosh, I'm so grateful that you're doing this to our industry to help us out. It was a very competitive field. So I've already spoken to a couple of companies who didn't make it, and they were like, why not? I'm like, my goodness, it was just a crazy, great field. So Barmak, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about some of the themes that came up. You already addressed some of the big themes, but maybe more specifically about the companies themselves for the top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to echo what you said, Cecilia, which is, the number of submissions from what I heard from Cecilia have increased dramatically, which is awesome to see. It's an area, again, in technology that continues to evolve. So, the number of companies since I started my career in cybersecurity, better part of 18 years ago, has exponentially increased, which is really awesome to see as well. But high level, I pointed out to the two main themes that have been evolving over the last 8 to 10 years. We see that still evolving. Let's see, if I have to pick some example, the other thing I would point out that's really important to point out is how much time the judges put in to give the appropriate due process to each of these submissions. I mean, these are entrepreneurs that put their blood, sweat, and tear into these submissions. They've worked really hard. And so we want to ensure that we hear all of them and we read, all the submissions. And so we take our job very seriously, and, all the judges put in a ton of time to ensure that we select the top 10 appropriately. But, some of the examples I can pick in the top 10 submissions, again, I think, there's one company that deals with Web3 security, for example. Market timing might not be ideal, but it's a really innovative way of thinking about, how do we secure the infrastructure for Web3 as it emerges. There's probably, 4 or 5 companies that fall into the application security area, spanning, the gamut of how do we outfit developers with more appropriate tools and effective tools so they can find security vulnerabilities and be able to fix those security vulnerabilities during the software development lifecycle, which is really awesome. And it's been a quest of the industry for a long period of time. In fact, my first company, Fortify, was kind of one of the first application security companies that came to market. So it's really heartening to see that emerging. There's a couple of companies that deal with application security more from an administrative perspective, which is how do we outfit the chief information security officer so they can have central audit control and a single pane of glass view towards what's happening upstream in their software development lifecycle. And finally, there is one company that provides APIs and an SDK that allows developers that need to build cyber features into the fabric of the application to go to one place to grab all the APIs to need to build those cyber features into the fabric of the application. They're coining the term SPaaS, which is Security Platform as a Service. So all of them awesome companies, all of them great companies, very innovative. And I bet we're going to have a hard time selecting who's going to be the best among all of them. But at least we're really proud of the top 10.
Yeah, I don't envy the task you all have before you there. Cecilia, I want to close with you. I mean, the week of RSA conference is a busy week for everybody. What's the equation here for folks to carve out some time in their schedule to make sure that they check out the Innovation Sandbox, things like the Launchpad and the Early Stage Expo programs? Why should folks spend their time here?
So everybody in this industry is very aware of how quickly our adversaries are actually moving and how innovative they are. I think that spending time learning more about what we are doing on the good fight side to address those concerns is what makes innovation here so important. And because, Dave, we've had just such a long year and long history of identifying some of the most incredible companies that are really changing how we address cybersecurity now in the Innovation Sandbox contest, I want you to go check out Launchpad. It's just great, and the Early Stage Expo. This is a great opportunity for those that are caring about how tomorrow's adversaries might be acting. How can we address them today? Come and see this at the Innovation Sandbox contest. See what's happening.
That's Cecilia Marinier from RSA Conference and Barmak Meftah from Ballistic Ventures. There's a lot more to this conversation. If you want to hear the full interview, head on over to CyberWire Pro and sign up for Interview Selects, where you'll get access to this and many more extended interviews. And it is always my pleasure to welcome to the show Dr. Awais Rashid. He is the director of the National Research Center on Privacy, Harm Reduction, and Adversarial Influence Online at University of Bristol. Professor Rashid, always a pleasure to have you back on the show. You know, I am fascinated by the intersection of cybersecurity and things that are out there in the real world. And I know you and your colleagues have been doing some work when it comes to smart farming. I was hoping you could share with us some insights on that today.
Yes, thank you for having me back again. Farming, like any other sector, is seeing increased deployment of digital technologies. You could call this effectively Internet of Things, but for farming. And you can see a number of application areas with regards to this in smart farming. For example, in horticulture, you can use this to monitor, for example, crop health. You can use it to monitor, for example, irrigation levels, or even kind of weather and responding to particular weather, or pest control and those kind of things. And in other types of farming, like dairy farming, it can also be used to monitor, for example, animal health, feed, movement, grazing, and providing more kind of free grazing and all those kind of things. So there is a lot of applications of Internet of Things and technologies in smart farming.
So what specifically are the cybersecurity concerns here?
So that's really where the challenge lies, because like with all other sectors, digital technologies offer a lot of benefits. But of course, you can also start to see that as technologies are deployed, they are not necessarily always considered with security built in, especially not too dissimilar to, for example, what we saw in industrial control system security. Devices are being deployed in rugged settings. Okay, farmers are not cybersecurity experts, nor do they have to be. And even a number of companies who are moving into this space, they're specifically coming in from an agriculture background rather than necessarily from a cybersecurity background, or those kind of practices that have been built in, say, for example, in the enterprise setting, just currently do not exist. So examples would be that, for example, you may have a farm and it would run what you would call a flat network. So everything is connected to everything else. There is no isolation. Often things are controlled from a single PC, which is then shared by a number of people on the farm. This may not be regularly updated, and devices are out there in the open, and they may not always be getting regular updates. So as an example, we've been testing some of the security of the devices that are deployed in these farms. So for example, we saw that the remote monitoring and management of some of the farming infrastructure had, vulnerabilities using insecure protocols or default logins, for example, which is considered kind of, a basic security practice in enterprise settings. But these kind of things are not necessarily currently being utilized in itself. Then there are other things that are being utilized. For example, in case of, say, dairy farming, collars, or think of them like sort of Fitbits for cows. They could be on the legs or on the necks, which are used for animals to kind of come by themselves through gates to go out for grazing or come back in due course for milking and so on. And again, our analysis shows that there are security vulnerabilities in these. So you can, for example, create effectively jams. So if animals can't get in automatically for milking, then it puts them in discomfort. Or if they can't go out grazing, then it's not good for their well-being. And also, cameras are often used to kind of monitor health, for example. And if those feeds can be interfered with, again, basic security practices don't always exist. If those feeds can be interfered with, then again, it leads to a serious welfare issue. So the fundamental thing here is that there are a lot of potential advantages of using smart farming, but the state of security is at a very early stage, and more needs to be done to build both fundamental security practices, but also understand what are the kind of nuanced needs of this sector so that we can provide appropriate cybersecurity mechanisms.
And how do you propose we go about doing that? As you mentioned, farmers are busy doing their farming. So how do we provide them with the level of security they need and not interrupt the work they're doing to provide us with a reliable food supply?
Absolutely. So the key here is really, security of the food supply, and an individual farm being impacted is perhaps an impact on the individual farmer and their business. But given that a lot of these systems are supplied by the same companies or same manufacturers, there is a risk of what we would call common mode failures. That, for example, one vulnerability impacts potentially hundreds of farms. But that's also where the advantage is. So our experience of actually working with people in the agri-tech sector has been really positive. So the companies who provide these services or these technologies, they're actually very keen to improve the security of these systems. So when we found a vulnerability and we reported, one of the organizers that worked with us, and within 3 days, the fix was deployed across, hundreds of farms, because they also provide managed services. So the farmer does not really take responsibility for updating the equipment or so on. This is all done by the company, which means that they also have the potential to apply security fixes as they go along. So multiple things need to be done. I think first, this good practice of responding positively to security vulnerabilities and actually improving the state of security is very, very important. And the other is really sort of more work with the sector itself to bring up the kind of basic fundamental state of security into the product, so that we start with those kind of practices that we have built in already in other areas. For example, in enterprise settings, about 20, 25 years ago, increasingly more in other critical infrastructure sectors, to also bring them here. Of course, regulators have a role to play, because considering that the state of security in farming is very, very important for exactly safeguarding the security of the food supply, but also integrity of that. So the issue here isn't that, for example, you can disrupt a set of farms and impact, sort of food reaching from the farm to the table. Potentially, if you interfere with treatment parameters, there is impact on destroying crops, for instance. And those are the kind of things that we need to be concerned about. So there is a positive experience on our part interacting with those who work in this sector. But I think more needs to be done to build basic security practices.
All right. Well, interesting insights for sure. Professor Awais Rashid, thank you for joining us. And now, a word from our sponsor, Halcyon. Ransomware is still one of the largest threats facing businesses in 2023. The Halcyon platform was built to stop it through a multi-layered protection approach featuring full encryption key capture, automated decryption, and the ability to prevent other security tools on the endpoint from being unhooked. Learn more about how they're leveraging capsule network-based machine learning to reduce ransomware recovery times down to minutes by visiting halcyon.ai. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Coming up on this weekend's Research Saturday, my conversation with Sharon Guz from Akamai discussing chatbots, celebrities, and victim retargeting and why crypto giveaway scams are still so successful. That's Research Saturday. Check it out. The CyberWire podcast is a production of N2K Networks, proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brandon Karpf, Eliana White, Guru Prakash, Liz Irvin, Rachel Gelfand, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Harold Terrio, Maria Vermatzis, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Millie Lardy, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Catherine Murphy, Janine Daly, Jim Hoshite, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jason Cole, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, Simone Petrella, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week. This episode is made possible in part by RSA Conference, where the world talks security. Through global events and year-round content, RSAC connects you to cybersecurity leaders and cutting-edge ideas for a safer, more secure future. Learn more at rsaconference.com/cyberwire23. And now, a word from our sponsor, Mimecast. You're wondering if you need more email and collaboration security, because, as it turns out, just protecting your workspace with M365 isn't good enough. You just watched your entire company grind to a screeching halt, all because someone opened a phishing email. Next time, don't rely on one-size-fits-all security. Protect your inbox with Mimecast and diversify your security stack. For a free trial, go to mimecast.com and keep your business from, falling apart. On a final note, our friends at N2K just launched T-, the only daily space podcast. Here's what you can expect from the show. Stay tuned for T-, ready to launch.
We are in a new space era. Advances in engineering and manufacturing have given us access to the heavens in ways that seemed almost unthinkable not that long ago. Private and public sector cooperation in the space industry is leading to innovation that sometimes feels like it's right out of a page of science fiction. But these achievements in space are real, and they're bringing incredible advances in defense, communications, infrastructure, engineering, and science to all of us right here on Earth. And they're happening fast. Join me. I'm Maria Varmazes, and I'm the host of T-, the daily space podcast for the space industry. Every day, you'll get the news and analysis you need to stay current on what's happening in space technology, business, and governance. To do that, I'll be talking with the people who are forging the path in this new space era, from industry leaders, technology experts and pioneers, to educators, policymakers, research organizations, and more. If you're a space professional looking to separate the signal from the noise and stay current on what's happening, this show is for you. Join me every day for T-, the daily space industry podcast.
T-minus.
Available on all major podcast platforms.